Another way to interpret what you just said is because AI is forcing us, disrupting us. AI is forcing us to do what we should always have done before, anyways. The strategy that you just talked about, real, authentic, expert point of view, founded in the voice of the customer, their pain points, their challenges. We've always, that has always been our strategy, right? What AI has done is it's allowed us to sound a lot smarter without having to do that deep work, having to have that unique point of view, right? It's like, wow, that was really good. Look at that. Let's just put that out. But we don't talk about AI as reinforcing the fundamentals of what it's needed to differentiate, to create a competitive advantage, to establish ourselves like a Gartner Forrester, like trusted advisor, right? That was my takeaway from what you were just saying there is we got to double down on the things that we know make us successful, that know differentiate us, right? That we know will build trust in the marketplace behind our voice. So thank you. I think that's a very different perspective than most people talk about AI, and I appreciate it. You talked about how AI is changing how you develop talent internally. And I love to say here, but I've never explored it from this perspective. PE firms, venture capital firms, they invest in the talent first, the idea second. That's how important. High performing teams are what create growth, right? You could have phenomenal idea. But we don't have the team to execute it. It's not going to happen. So how do you think about AI and talent and how we have to develop and think about talent differently today?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Steve, because, another question I get asked a lot too often is with AI being there, do we need as many people? Do we need juniors? Right. So it's, how AI is changing that equation of what are people actually doing in the work and how do they grow and how do they grow that expertise and that unique voice and that experience. And I think it's one of the darker sides of AI think, is that so much of the work that typically was done by juniors can be automated. And of course, it's great for cost savings, but we are essentially now creating a vacuum in which, people who are young, who don't have experience or a unique point of view yet, but have to develop one, they don't have an opportunity to do so. And at some point, they will have to progress in their careers. They will have to become managers. Let's say, they have mastered AI, they have started using it, maybe somehow indiscriminately, but they're getting away with it and they're becoming managers, but they have never learned to be practitioners. So, what kind of managers can they be, right? You need the judgment. And I'm always going back to this like judgment. There was time where judgment was a bit of like a negative word. I feel it's never been more positive than now. You need to have judgment. And that comes only through trying something repeatedly and failing, because you write like a headline, you get it bad, you do something wrong, your boss gives you bad feedback, you feel really ashamed. That's where learning happens, right? That feeling of like, I really messed it up. I don't want to feel like that again. That's how you learn what's good and what's not good. So you need to go through that before you're able to develop the instinct for what is actually good. What does that look like? And so, if AI is writing those things, creating those headlines, doing the job that the junior person would have done before, and it's doing kind of an okay job. And, where is that exposure that can create judgment for the person, right? So everything is kind of okay. But how do you learn what separates okay from great or okay from not so okay? So, yeah, you're maybe learning to edit, but you're not really learning to create. And I think, that's a real risk for the young people in the workplace. But another thing that I have noticed is that also, some senior people are using AI also indiscriminately. And that is a bigger problem and a less forgivable one. Because I think, you can tell. And especially when, a senior person outsources somewhat strategic decisions to AI, and you can tell. And I think that is, something that can erode a lot of trust really quickly in the senior people as well. So I think you just have to be really careful, really deliberate. Obviously, you should not avoid using AI, but you need to build that judgment and you need to always exercise that judgment.